everyone, welcome back to the Adams Health Network Laboratory Onboarding BS to MedTech program tutorial. This is part 3 where I will be showing you how to access a module, and I will also be discussing the requirements needed to complete each individual module. Just a reminder that if you are a MedTech onboarding program participant, this is the BS to MedTech program tutorial, and your tutorial is located within this page here. Once again, on your screen, you see the laboratory onboarding landing page. This is the page that you will view most frequently. It's the page that you will interact with most. It is the page that will come up every time you access the SharePoint site. And as previously mentioned, you can access the modules by clicking any of these links here, or you can view them by clicking on this side toolbar here. For the purpose of this video, I am going to show you each of the modules, how they're set up, and we're just kind of going to go through each of the requirements needed to complete each module. So if I click here on the General Laboratory Practices and Procedures module, you'll see the title of the module. You will see the learning requirements, which we'll touch on later in this video. You'll see the laboratory policies and procedures. You'll see the virtual training section. And this is the only module that you will not see a department schedule. So if I click here to phlebotomy, you'll scroll down and you'll see this department schedule that will give you the times that you're required to do your virtual training and the times that you're required to do your bench or departmental training. Keep in mind, as I mentioned in the first video, that this is completely subject to change, this department schedule. By the time I post these, by the time that you are doing your training, this may be completely rearranged. So just keep that in mind, that this is not set in stone. I have accessed the General Laboratory Practices and Procedures module through this sidebar. I just clicked on this tab, and the first thing that I want to discuss with you is the learning requirements for each module. For each module, there are two different types of learning requirements. We either have objectives or we have competencies. Keep in mind that objectives focus mainly on what you have learned and the knowledge that you have acquired through virtual training. So through YouTube videos that you watch, through media lab courses that you take, through case simulators that you have to complete. In comparison, a competency is more of how you behave and how you interact with the trainings presented to you within your departmental training. So if I want to show you an example, I'll go to immunology, because this is one that has very set in stone objectives and competencies. So, for example, upon completion of your virtual training for immunology, you should be able to describe the sequence of antibody synthesis, and you'll watch this through a YouTube video. However, it would be rather hard for us to virtually show you how to validate the accuracy of test results based on assessment of obtained quality control values. And so that is why we have set in place these two different types of learning requirements. That way we can monitor how you're doing with the background knowledge, with the objectives, and how you're doing applying that background knowledge in the lab. I'm going to jump back to the General Laboratory Practices and Procedures. Over here on this right side, you see checklists, and you'll see that throughout all modules you'll have some checklists. And again, I just want to mention that anything MT onboarding, that does not pertain to you, so you can disregard that. If we click here, this will take us directly to the module checklist. I have a checklist created for you that will help you progress through these. These checklists list what you need to do. So to start, you'll read the following Adams Health Network policies and procedures. Once you've completed it, you'll put a check mark here. Then you'll progress through your virtual training. You'll put a check mark here once you've completed each of those. And then you'll complete your exam and you'll write down your score. And that is just for you to keep track, and it's a way to help you stay organized. Then we'll click on this training checklist. This is what, of course, this is what you'll need to do to complete your training. So if I click on here, for example, specimen collection, this is what we need to train you with in the laboratory. So this is your in-person training. And so you'll have to be trained in venipuncture, you'll have to be trained in capillary puncture, etc. And you'll need to date, you'll need to initial here, and then your trainer will initial as soon as you've completed those. Not all modules have those. They'll be laid out for you over here. And then if we go to a more serious module such as immunology or urinalysis, coagulation, chemistry, the more content-heavy modules, you'll also have some competency task lists. And this is where you'll prove to us that you're competent in a testing procedure. And as you can see, you'll have to do 4 infectious mono tests, 100% accurate every time. You'll either meet or not meet these, and then the trainer will initial. So you'll become more familiar with those as you get into the modules that require competency task lists. So now that we have discussed the learning requirements, I want to jump down here to the laboratory policies and procedures. So you are required to read each and every laboratory policy and procedures, and these are organized by a folder. If you can remember, we had that folder at the very first video. We had a folder full of lab policies, and you have to read through all of those. So you can either access those by clicking on the links here, or if you use this drop-down button, you can access the same thing by clicking on that drop-down button. And so for the general laboratory practices and procedures, you have to read policies pertaining to the operation of a laboratory, the organization of the laboratory, the quality improvement, safety, computer procedures, pathology, performance improvement, and point of care. That's everything that you need to read. You will read the most policies in the general laboratory practices and procedures. After that, you will not have as many policies. I want to note quickly that if you click on, for example, safety, one of these folders with all the policies in it, and you read through all of these and you scroll down and you see this resource section here. This is just some files, some charts, some forms that you will come in contact with as a medical laboratory technologist that you may want to view in advance. So, for example, within this safety folder of the general laboratory practices and procedures, we discuss counter cleaning. And if you click on this here, you'll see this counter cleaning log sheet. And that's just so you are familiar with it before you get into your career as a laboratory technologist. So now I'm going to discuss virtual training with you. So after you have viewed all of these, you've read all of these policies, you're going to be introduced to some virtual training. So typically these are set up in the same way for each module. Some are a little different just based on how they are presented, but for the most part, you'll have some basics. So you'll either have clinical laboratory basics, you'll have urinalysis basics, you'll have coagulation basics, some basics that'll give you a brief overview of what the department in the laboratory is. So you'll have to watch some videos, you'll have to review some documents, you'll have to complete some training in Media Lab, which we'll discuss in the Media Lab tutorial. But if you click on these links, it'll take you directly to what you need to watch. And then additionally, I have broken it up into sections, so you'll have your basics. You may have some testing procedures, for example, like in urinalysis, you will have testing procedures that you'll view, and then you'll have troubleshooting and equipment. And this is just any time that you may encounter a troubleshooting error, anything that requires you to do some troubleshooting, this may give you some background information on how to approach that. Additionally, this section will show you how to use some equipment that is frequently used in the clinical laboratory. And again, I want to mention that this does look overwhelming upon first glance, but keep in mind that you have this module checklist that you can use to stay organized and to stay on task. I do want to mention something else about the learning requirements. I think it's important to go ahead and read through all of these once you get to a new module. So for example, as soon as you finish your immunology module, you get to your urinalysis and miscellaneous module, go ahead and read through your objectives, because that will show you what you're being introduced to in this module. Additionally, I think it's important that once you have completed a module, you go through and you review these. You come up, for example, at this urinalysis and miscellaneous module, you say, yes, I can describe the significance of and the procedure used to perform an icto test on urine. And if you can't do that, if you get to one, you can't define the optimal storage time and temperature for urinalysis samples, you can scroll down here and you can find that video or the document talking about that, and you can refresh yourself on that. I think it's important to do that as a way to self-reflect on what you have learned and what you still need to learn. I'm going to touch briefly on the optional learning that is presented in each of these modules. So the only time that you'll see any optional learning is in the chemistry module and in the hematology module. So you'll scroll all the way down after the department schedule, or before the department schedule, you'll see this optional learning section. These are not required. These optional learning assignments or courses, whatever you prefer to call them, are for your knowledge only. So these will not be tested. These are not required for you to complete a module. They are just there in case you're interested in any of the following. So there's the chemistry optional learning assignments, and then down here is the optional learning for hematology. These are the only two modules that have optional learning. I do mention in the Media Lab tutorial that there are other courses, and if you are interested in taking them, then you can absolutely do that. But what is required to complete for this program is listed here, and this is all that you have to do. This is all that we are going to cover in the SharePoint tutorial for this program. If you have any questions about what was presented in this SharePoint, about what was presented in the program overview and description, or in any of the modules, please refer to that overview and description for your program, or ask your supervisor or manager. I'm sure they will be able to answer it if you have any questions. I hope that this tutorial was helpful for you, and it provided you with some essential knowledge. That way you can smoothly progress through this program. Thank you.